I got an idea. How about we tackle the hardest question on the Salesforce Trailblazer community? That's right. This week on the Salesforce Admins podcast, we're going to look for advice on finding your first admin job and doing the interview, getting experience, and more. And we're going to do all that with CEO and co-founder of Arkus, Jason Atwood. Jason and I chatted at Trailblazer DX and really wanted to dive into this topic. Now, before we bring Jason on, just want to make sure that you're following the Salesforce Admins podcast on iTunes or Spotify. That way, when new episodes like this one come out, they're automatically downloaded to your phone. But enough about that. Let's talk about finding that first job or even finding your next job as a Salesforce administrator. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, we tackle the myth of, but it's just an admin job. So with that, let's get Jason on the podcast. So Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time since we've podcasted together.
I know. I was thinking back. Well, we were just reminiscing of the days at the Marriott Marquis and the Arkus podcast.
Yep. You were on an episode of Cloud Focus Weekly. We had it as part of our trivia once. There was only 4 or 5 guests ever on the podcast, and you were one of them. Yeah.
Snuck in.
You
Only
did.
proximity, I'm going to say. So catch people up. What have you been up to?
Well, since then, whatever that was, 10 years ago. So I am now the current CEO and co-founder of Arkus. We're a Salesforce consulting firm. We deal mostly in the nonprofit space, and we've grown from that little company back then. We're almost up to 75 people. And now I run around between putting out fires, talking on podcasts, and trying to educate myself on the whole changing landscape of technology.
Yeah, it does feel like in the last decade, it's gone from everything we know to a brand new world.
It certainly is. And I just spent 3 hours at a Heroku dev meetup and could hang there mentally for a bit, but they lost me at a little point. So it's both fun, interesting, and challenging to stay up with all the stuff.
So one of the things that everyone's trying to stay up with is the ever-changing job market and hiring. We see a lot of the questions in the Trailblazer community from new admins, people getting into the ecosystem that want to become Salesforce admins, people in the ecosystem that are, looking for jobs or maybe have kind of hit a career plateau. And you and I were chatting, and boy, I think it'd be fun to kind of delve into that topic with you.
Let's do it. I have some experience in hiring people over the last 15 years, so we certainly talk
more
about
than
it.
More than me.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started. So a lot of let's start fresh. There's a lot of new people, as we were talking about in the intro. There's a lot of new people coming into the ecosystem that maybe don't have tech advice, that are doing Trailhead modules, completing challenges, getting a lot of badges, trying to round out their resumes. And they don't know A, what to look for, or B, what to put on their resume. So somebody that's hired a bunch of people and been around for a long time, let's start there with some of your advice and where they should go.
Sure. This is a very common thing. And first thing I would tell everybody is relax. It's going to be okay. I know it feels daunting, and you see these triple all-star rangers, and you see all these the hoodies, and you see the people with the 15 certifications and 10 years of experience, and you feel like, how am I ever going to get there? You'll get there. So first thing is just to take it easy and not to get too worked up on it, because it does feel like a lot. It's a very big community and filled with lots of hungry people for jobs, right? A lot of recruiters, a lot of activity. When I talk to people about getting started in the ecosystem, and certainly on the admin track, and we could talk about other tracks if you want, but on the admin track, I kind of say, all those things matter. So when it comes to certifications, when it comes to Trailhead, when it comes to experience, they all matter. And usually the question I get is, but what should I focus on? And so I came up with something, I maybe made it up years and years ago. I call it the 30-20-50 rule. Or 20-30-50, doesn't matter. You can break it up anyway. So, and if you're going to take your time, right, you're in the hunt for a job and you need to do the education, you need to get enabled, you need to build your experience level. I break it down into those percentages. So 20% of the time, I'd focus on Trailhead. And the trick for Trailhead is you just have to be a ranger. We don't even look at people who aren't rangers. It's just,
Ooh.
I have an intern apply the other day, and I said, you're not even on Trailhead. Go get a ranger before I even talk to you. So that to me is just a minimum bar. Just go be a ranger. And then if you can go up from there, that's great. And then if you're still in your Trailhead worlds, the thing that we then look for, besides looking at their profile, is it filled out? Have they thought about it? Have they treated it like LinkedIn? So second advice on the Trailhead side is treat your profile like LinkedIn. Fill it out. Put your picture. Put your description. Do all the things. It'll probably take you no more than a half an hour. Make your URL. You can make your customized URL so people can find you. Do all the things so it looks like you're part of the community, right? Make sure that your profile is rich and full. And then the third thing on the Trailhead side of things is to go for Superbadges. So I can look at double ranger, triple ranger all day long, but if I don't see some Superbadges, and I speak from someone who doesn't have any Superbadges.
Oh no.
I know. It's on my hit list for this year. I know. I mean, I have 15 certs, and so I have some experience, but I say get some Superbadges, because we see that when we look at that as a higher level of dedication and of expertise. Because as you know, and as I've been doing them, they're difficult. They show that you have really dug in, and they're more than just answering some questions or watching videos or getting fun ones. I love badges, but the Superbadges really show that kind of a deeper level of education and sort of just being in the Trailhead world. So that's the 20%. Then the 30% is certifications. You need to have both. You can't have one without the other. I don't know what that commercial was, peanut butter and chocolate or something. But
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it might be that. Certifications are important. You should focus on them. What I tell people is you need to get them, but you can't stall. Most people, I think, when we talk to them, and we'll find in the ecosystem, say, "Oh, I'm thinking about getting that," or "I'm planning to get that one next year." And our advice is, nope, go get it. Go get it now. Go take it. Go take the test a couple times. Do whatever it is you can do to start your certification journey. Don't put it off. Don't procrastinate on it. You don't have to be perfect. Just go get some. And obviously there's a path, of which ones you should get, blah, blah, blah. Depends on where you're kind of going in your world. But having at least one or two certs is kind of a bare minimum. So if you're starting off and you're trying to get into the ecosystem, that's your 20 and your 30. And then the 50 is the hardest part. And this is, it's just hard to tell people because it's the experience. The third thing we look for is experience. I want to see that you've done something. Obviously, new to the ecosystem, harder to have the experience, but that's where I say spend 50% of your time trying to gain that experience. There's the old adage, try to go work with a nonprofit, although there's some pushback on that nowadays because of the complexity of the platform. You don't want to hurt a nonprofit. There's definitely get in a way. There's tons of programs out there that will help you do mock projects and things where you can just get your hands dirty. And even if you have to build your own thing that you're going to demo, you got to get experience, because I've not hired people with 22 certifications and because it didn't add up to any experience. And I've seen people with tons and tons of experience with 0 certs, and I would hire anyway because I've just from experience. But for me, that's how I tell, spend your time, 20% Trailhead, 30% certifications, and 50% getting that experience.
I think that that 50%, that part that you're talking about, is always the part that feels like the hardest to get into, because if you're not in tech and you don't have any experience and you're trying to land that first job, that can feel like if I could get this job, then I could get the experience. And so part of that lends to my next question is, so you're new. We've checked all the boxes on filling out our profiles and done that part. What should I get ready for when I interview?
Yeah, so every interview is going to be different, obviously, but a lot of places are using assessments now. So I would say be prepared for an assessment. That means functionally they're going to ask you to do something. They're going to ask you to build something, or take something they've done and turn it into something on the platform using Salesforce as the platform. So I would just be ready for that. Be prepared, be okay with it, even do mock versions of it, right? Go have a friend, and I've given this advice to some people, but go have a friend, sit down with them, talk to them about what they do, and you'll uncover something that they're collecting data. And as soon as you can figure out what the data they're collecting, whether it's books or they collect comic books or they're a skier or they're a runner, anything you do, you can just come up with, ooh, what if I built you an app to track that? So be prepared to have an assessment of your skills and be able to show that in a short period of time, meaning it might be a take home. Sometimes it's a take home, like, hey, go do this over the weekend. Other times it's you have an hour. Come back and show us what you did. Ooh. So I'd say, oh, wow, yeah, I know. I've been doing that for 15 years to people. Trust me, I've seen a lot of oohs.
I can imagine.
Even had one person pass out in the interview.
Oh, my. Oh, yeah, good. You get an extra hour now.
Yeah. So I think it's coming more and more in the ecosystem because, again, it's when you look at a resume, when you looked at LinkedIn, a lot of it's just you can't tell whether they know what they're doing. If you actually do an assessment, you can then assess, okay, you functionally know how to do things. So I'd be prepared for that. The other thing is, I think when you're really, especially in the new, just be honest about what you do and do not know. That's really, really key. Don't fluff up your resume. Don't put things that you don't know. Don't put clouds. Don't throw in Data Cloud if you don't know what Data Cloud is and haven't used it or really can't really explain it. Just because you took a Trailhead on something doesn't mean you know that platform or know that cloud. So I really say be honest with what you know and the clouds and the products, because that's going to be super important in the interview process.
Wow. How much in prep work for resumes? There's a lot of AI tools out there. So I'd love to know your perspective on both sides of this. One, how much do you, as somebody hiring, kind of look for, they used AI to generate most of this resume? And on the flip side, how much should somebody building the resume that could really benefit from an AI tool, how much should they lean into it?
So I'm going to be the strange answer on this one,
good.
Yeah, because I'm going to say resumes don't matter.
Okay,
they're just checking a box. When people get to me in the interview process, they're beyond the resume. So yes, you need to have a resume because you need it, because that's the part of it's like it. You have to have the internet, right? You have to have a way to fill out the form. So you need to have a resume, and it should have your accomplishments and stuff on it. But I don't look at resumes because they're just lies, right? They're just you telling me all these things. And sometimes I don't know if any of that's really true or not true. So to me, it's like just a checking the box. Yes, you have to have a resume. Yes, it should be okay. Honestly, your LinkedIn profile should be your resume, right? Because that's real. It's on the web. And if you're lying, someone might actually call you out for it. Hey, you didn't work at that company for 10 years. So I would say focus more on the LinkedIn, because I'll look at that. If you gave me 10 minutes, I'd look at your LinkedIn first. I would not look at your resume because it's what you've put on rather than what your actual history has been. That being said, you want to throw all the stuff on there that for this ecosystem. So I do think showing work that you've done, and really pointing to problems you solved. If you really think about any job, right, especially as an administrator, you're a Salesforce admin, you're basically solving problems all day long, right? Mm-hmm. And you're communicating. So two things that I tell people about the resume and the process is, how do you show that you've solved problems in the past in your resume? And then how do you show that you are a great communicator? Because great communication, it doesn't matter not what job, but certainly in this world, you are basically talking to people, helping them out, doing stuff, recommunicating with them, getting what they need to do, building it, whatever. You might work with different groups or whatever, but that communication skill is something we deeply look at. So again, if you're going to focus on stuff, don't so much focus on your resume as focus on how to be a great communicator.
That's really good advice, because I have been at that level where people show up and the resume looked good, but they couldn't facilitate the conversation or articulate any kind of answer in the interview.
It is a skill that not a lot of people have, and so it's a skill. You can learn it. So a couple things to put into that communication bucket. We'll go down a little rat hole here.
Yeah, let's do.
One is empathy.
Okay.
Have the ability to show empathy, and that means sort of having a conversation with somebody, and throwing in stuff that's like listening to them, talking to them, obviously pulling out information about them, but having the empathy when they say something's not going to happen or whatever. They could say it's a rainy day. I look for it in every interview that I do. Now, this is going to be on the podcast. Everybody's going to know this, but I will actually throw things into my talk track or as, just the warm up when you're sort of, how are you and what's going on? I will always throw in something to test empathy. I'll say, oh, I'm okay, but, I didn't sleep well last night, or, I had a bad, egg sandwich this morning, or, I tripped over the dog when I came into the room. And I just listen to hear what they react. If they go, oh, that's terrible. Oh, yeah, I know dogs can be really difficult. Or, you know what, I get my egg sandwiches from downstairs, whatever. But hearing that back of that empathy, super important. Second is actually listening. So I will listen to people how they listen to me. Are they interrupting me? Are they talking over me? Are they going, yeah, as I speak, right? I listen for their real intent and true sort of conversational skills. And so the ability to actually listen, pause, and then answer is a really big, it's a great skill to have. And so the people who can do that, I know that they can do almost any job better because they've intently done that listening skill and they've got it working. So those are two that I throw out to most people when they're trying to build their conversational habits.
I'm listening to you answer that, and I'm playing devil's advocate in my head and saying maybe people are hearing Jason say this because he's hiring consultants. So why do you think this also translates over to people that are embedded in different, work groups or teams or have stakeholders within an organization and aren't consultants, like for your organization?
Because basically being an admin is being a consultant in one organization. You are a consultant. What are you doing? You're talking to people. They're coming to you with their problems. You're getting their requirements. You're satisfying their needs. You're working with them. You're iterating. You're changing it. You're updating things, and then you're presenting it back to them. Right? It's not in the thing that changes when you become a consultant is you're paying for someone's time, which then becomes a whole nother thing. But also you might be working with other organizations, and the level of expectation of how you do that and your expertise goes way up. And this is something I warn people about moving into consulting, is that when you're an admin, you have the ability to take some time. Someone says, hey, can you build me these 3 dashboards that I want to track my sales forecasting? And go, sure. And you could go Google it and you spend a week and you come back and you're like, here's your 3 dashboards. They're ecstatic. They're like, great, thank you. They don't care that it took you 3 weeks or whatever. And then you had to ask your friend and Google it or ask ChatGPT to do it for you. In the consulting space, it's different. They don't ask, could you build this for me? They say, A, what are the options to build it? How long is it going to take you? And can you get it to me by next Tuesday? So the expectation level of what you're doing goes way up, and they expect you to be expert. They don't expect you to ever say, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. As an admin, right. I said, I don't know, I'll figure it out. Oh, you want to build some tracker for your feedback form? Sure. Let me go figure it out. Go away for a week and I'll come back and show you something. So I think that's part of it. But as an admin, you're still doing all the stuff. It's the same stuff inside the organization. You're just not working with external companies or people. You work with internal people. So you still have, Mary from accounting coming over and wants to synchronize with the QuickBooks, and you still have the CEO come over and they want an update to some dashboard because they can't figure it out. And you're doing the same stuff. You're just it's more internal, more ad hoc generally.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. Also, Mary from accounting, they always want to, for some reason, you can't seem to get opportunities flowing through your sales org, but let's integrate finance.
So true. So true.
But you kind of led into that. So what are the different jobs or different tasks, types of jobs that admins would tackle within an organization?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of were started in there. You do become an internal consultant, but I think you first have to just think of especially when you're applying for it, and this goes back to sort of the applying and getting the jobs thing. When you're looking at the organization, you obviously want to know what their Salesforce landscape is. So if I were in the interview process, what I would do is come loaded with a bunch of really good questions. And I would pepper that person with tons of questions about their Salesforce instance, or as we call in the biz, we call it their org. But I would come in with what kind of licenses, how old is it, what kind of integrations, what kind of applications do you have? When's the last time you did a health check? Do you use permission sets or permission set groups? Or did you flip the lightning yet? I mean, I would be peppering them, showing my expertise to get that admin job. So that's just on the interview side. I just want to throw that in. But coming back to what you do, again, it really depends on the organization. And this is actually a myth that is out there in the ecosystem, is that admins get bored and admins don't get to play with lots of different clouds and admins don't do a lot of diverse things. That's completely not true, because it depends what organization you're with. I was with a company who had 375,000 people. I had a team. I had 5 people, or 5, including me. We were all admins. That's what we did. And we had 12 different production orgs. 12 orgs with production. And I think, 9 different applications running in them with thousands and thousands and thousands of users. We were not bored. We had plenty to do. We were playing with great, big, unlimited licensing and integrations and projects. But we were admins. Like at the end of the day, we were admins. Same thing. You go work for a small company that's, I don't think anyone would hire a full-time admin at 4 people, but the smaller the organization who's just using Salesforce for one thing and has no chance of expanding it or doing it or going anywhere, yeah, you're going to get bored, right? You come in, you're going to help out Marion County, you get that one project done, and then they're going to be like, can you reset passwords all day? So I think as part of the interview process, to pulling it back in to that, and when you're job seeking, you should be really interested in what especially if you want to be a Salesforce admin and you really want to do it full time, what's their Salesforce roadmap? Are they just solid, like they have it and they have it up and running for 5 years and that's it? Or do they have things that they want to do, like new stuff you can build? Do you want to do the integration with that? We want to bring in Marketing Cloud next year. We're looking at how to do predictive AI, like whatever. So if I were bringing more questions as the trying to get the job, I would bring in that to the organization. I'd say, where's your roadmap? Or do you not have one? And I think that would show, as a hiring person, I'd be like, oh, they're forward looking. And it'll also give you the idea of, are you going to get bored in 6 months? Because you don't want to get bored in 6 months.
Right. Although maybe a smaller footprint would be really good if you're looking to get that first admin job.
Exactly. Right. So, but then you have the counter, right? You smaller footprint, but they don't have they have 40 users and they only use it for service. So you get in, you do some work, you do all the stuff, and then you're like, now what?
Right. So like you brought up myths of admins, and one is, well, I don't get exposed to enough clouds, right? Like, and I've heard that, at various events. Well, we only use Data Cloud. Or I just don't, get to see it. And I feel like, and this still exists, like all of these articles on admin to something else, as though admin's just the front door. All you got to do is get in and do that for a few months. But the real money and the real challenge is elsewhere. What would you say to that myth of just an admin?
I think it is a bit of a myth, and it makes admins and being an administrator, Salesforce administrators, feel like this. Yeah, it's like you're the fry person in the back at McDonald's. Like, well, I don't ever go back and cook the hamburgers. I don't know, and it's not true.
Although because the fries are kind of the best part.
That's true. I actually worked at McDonald's, and I was the fry person, so that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
But yes, at some organizations, you could be the one admin and that could be your role for a long period of time, and you could get bored and it could just be a starter. At other organizations, you could run an entire group of admins. You could have 6 or 7 admins. You could be part of a team of people supporting a lot of different Salesforce instances, and it could go anywhere from just administrative down to like sort of more the solution architect type of stuff, or more towards the BA sort of stuff, or more towards the development. One of the things, you and I have been in this ecosystem for a long time. What we were able to do 10 years ago on the platform with our clicks, and what we're able to do with clicks now, we're programming, right? Let's be clear. When we're building flows, we're programming. We're just programming with a user interface, but that's programming, and the stuff you can do is stunning. That you just couldn't do, with any of the tools unless you were writing Apex. So I think even the idea that admins who are getting that technical acumen and are going into sort of the more, programmatic type of world of admin, that could go long. There's lots of paths you can go down for that. So that's where I think some of the myths should go away, because you're not just the admin who's building a report, adding a field to a, page layout and assigning a permission set. Like, there's many, many different pieces of that platform. And that's before you even talk about the clouds, right? Before you say there's now, I don't know how many clouds. There's a lot of clouds. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up flow. I think back to the days of, boy, if I could just stand up like a window pane, a screen that people could input the data into, as opposed to just editing raw right on the record. And now we can do that. And you can do that just using the interface. You don't have to write a single line of code, it is stunning
what you can do with that tool. And it's one of the things that has left me a little bit behind, because I'm old school admin, right? I'm a workflow rule person. Mm-hmm. And for that, I would have wrote in a user story and had someone written up a Visualforce page, right? And with Apex in the background. And now it's, the stuff that we can produce with flows, screen flows, and even the call outs. I was watching the call out today, a flow that made a call out to a Heroku Dymo that did a lookup to a Postgres database that pulled in AI predictions. I was like, what? So yeah, the world of an admin is becoming very, very broad in some ways.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and you can also now trigger flows through prompts and have it call AI. And I mean, in a year from now, this is all going to sound like super wow. They were impressed they could do that. Now look at where we are, kind of stuff. One thing we didn't touch on is, there's a lot of job places to look at and career stuff. Often, when looking like it for developer or architect, I think those are a little more defined. Also, especially with developer, they've got experience in writing developer job titles for other platforms. So it's very easy to translate that over to Salesforce. What are things that admins should look for in job descriptions that maybe if the title or description doesn't say Salesforce admin, that will be the role?
Yeah, it's a tough one because, the easiest thing to say is look for the keyword Salesforce. Obviously, there's going to be some sort of piece of that. I think you'd have to go a little old school and think of like the platform and what it's doing. So I would start to look for things that were based on sort of what Salesforce, the platform's doing. Is it sales, right? Is it marketing? Is it service? Is it nonprofit? Especially in the nonprofit space, which is for me. So we would look at grant writing, fundraising, and all that stuff, which could be keywords for we're using Salesforce in the background, but we're using it to do all these things. So I guess the meta hint, without giving the keywords, is what is this organization doing? What is the output of their world? And then looking at what the tool set they're using, because it might not be Salesforce, right? There are other ways of saying the word. They might say something like Health Cloud, and a Health Cloud administrator, and you're like, well, that's Salesforce. Or they might say, Net Zero Cloud, or they might say Nonprofit Cloud. Again, not saying Salesforce, but that's what it's based on. So sometimes you, as an administrator and part of this ecosystem, you have to know that there are products that are sitting on top of the platform that don't necessarily say the word in it. They don't, remember when they named everything Force? Everything was Force. Something Force, this Force, that Force.
We had everything named Lightning for a while too.
That too. That was fun.
We like to do that a lot. I think everything's named Einstein now.
Pretty much.
I'll probably get in trouble for saying that.
Yes, you will.
But you could do the bingo card of like name everything Einstein lightning force, and then you're covered.
I'm going to win that bingo.
Einstein lightning force, and then like the actual product, then you're covered.
Totally.
What I was looking through all my notes, roles and descriptions and interviewing and challenges and certifications, and I feel we touched on a lot. What is something that you feel we missed that you talk about, that you bring up, that maybe people aren't thinking about when they're looking to, interview or get an admin position?
Sure. I think there's a couple more things I would, if I were giving advice, which I happen to do all the time.
You're full of advice.
Full of advice, maybe too much. So one thing, and this is just generic to not Salesforce, but as anybody looking for a job, cultural fit, I think, is becoming more and more of a need. And I think we, as people applying for jobs, you should be looking at it both ways. Do I fit that culture, and does that culture fit me? And that's, do my values and the company's values or the organization's values align together? And asking a lot of questions around culture is going to become more and more important, especially because we go to remote work and all that. So I think what we used to think of like, we had coffee breaks and pizza parties every quarter is now a much bigger discussion. So I would say bring culture into the conversation. Another tip that I hadn't given yet is just preparedness. It seems silly to say you have to be prepared for an interview, but I can tell you the amount of people who show up who are not prepared. They're just not prepared. They don't know their resume. They don't have good questions. They don't know how to talk to their experiences. And I'm stunned when it happens, but it happens a lot. And one of my little pet peeves, I'm giving away all my hints. Boy, anybody interviewing is going to be able to nail the interview next time they get to me.
Yeah, you say that, but I bet not.
Probably not, right? No one's even going to pay attention. But having really good questions is something that I look for. Again, we work in an industry where being able to ask your users what they want and question them and being insightful is a great skill. So if I get to the end of one of my diatribe speeches and I say, do you have any questions? And they're like, no, I'm good. I immediately go, okay. And then I'm not good because so have questions ready at the go. Have them sitting in front of you on a piece of paper, on a sticky note, in an Evernote, wherever. It's super important. And don't be generic. Don't say, where do you see yourself? Like, don't interview the interviewee.
Right.
Ask really stuff that's like based on like homework you did. And that's sort of the prepared thing too. When people come in and they say, oh, I read your blog post last week about blah, blah, blah. I was really interested about this key point. Immediately, I'm like, they did their homework. They know what they're talking about. And they're asking me something interesting. Don't say, how do you guys do raises? Like, that's not going to be, you need to have the questions about the culture or the stuff, I've had some really good ones last, but I've had some really terrible questions. And then I'll give you two more tips. This is like the 100 tips for interviewing in the Salesforce Ecosystem podcast.
We'll call it 98.
There you go.
Always
two more is you can never, if you want to get two skills, if I told someone to go get two skills before they get any job to be super useful on day one, two things they should be focusing on: data and documentation.
Ooh.
Your ability to understand data is like, you need to have it. You have to have it as a skill. You need to know data. You need to know, how data interconnects with other data. You need to know how to report on it. It's getting more and more and more important. So I look for data skills, even data nerds, people who say, I love data. So if you're not that type of person, I would say these jobs are going to be tough, because I don't know anywhere in the ecosystem that we are not just really crazed about and or dealing with lots of data. It is sort of what Salesforce is in the back of all of it. So understanding data, taking courses on it, go learn SQL, go learn regular databases, go learn third normal form, learn it and understand it, because any of your skill sets that you have that are based in data will make you better at any job in this ecosystem. So data. Second is documentation, because one of the things you can do very quickly at any role is document things. You need to be able to document. You need to be able to take what people say, summarize it, put it into something, and spit it back out for people to take in. If you're an admin, you got to come up with a training plan or a training agenda. You're an admin, you have to come up with a user story that you hand off to a developer or someone to build something. Documenting is, and it's, I know there's trailheads on it and you can go to those, but like really learning how to document. Even so much prove that skill when you talk to somebody and you follow up with an email that proves that you know how to talk to, that you listened, and that you're following up with documentation skills, coming back with key points or things that you wanted or questions. All great ways to show, but I would say two things you could just learn to show up on day one to start working and doing things is know data very well and know how to document things.
Well, those are really good points. I would hammer on that cultural fit and question part a lot, because I always feel like you and I are of a certain generation that we kind of almost interviewed in the hopes that they chose us, right? Like the best of the survivor. we get picked. But the part that really dawned on me as I moved through my career was I also need to interview that person to see, is this the type of person that I'm comfortable? Will I be excited to get on a call with them every day? Does this feel like the type of company that I'm going to be excited to go to work at? Or do I just want to get in? And I've had, I've made the mistakes of going to work for companies and then realizing I didn't ask enough cultural questions. The way things operate here and my expectations for this job are very different than what I had in my head. And it's my fault because I didn't talk about them.
Yeah, and again, I think it's different. Even again, culture was, I hate to say it, but it wasn't really that much. It wasn't that important. 20 years ago, I wasn't worried about culture. Right. Now, I think it's above compensation.
Yeah,
I think it really is. And I've seen people go to places for less compensation because of better culture. I've seen people leave terrible cultures because that were highly paid. So really bringing that in, and that means how do they work? How do people collaborate? And you can ask these questions in the interview. You can say, "What do you do to what are the 3 things you're doing this year to help your culture be better or to improve your culture at your company?" Someone asked me that, I'd be like, "Ooh, wow, okay,
that's a good question.
It's a great question, right?" You're then learning. Are they doing anything to make it better?
Right.
Or ask about one of the things that we take at Arkus is very important. Is when I was doing my key goals for like the next 5 years, and I was doing some presentations and talking to the staff about it, I had culture as a 5th thing. And then after doing it, I thought, wait, no, that's wrong. It's got to be number 1. So for me, you ask a company, say, what are the main things you're thinking about doing for the next 5 years? What are the 5 key things that you're doing? What are your pillars or whatever? Mm-hmm. And if they don't say culture, then you'll be like, oh, why isn't culture there? And then you'll probably catch someone off guard. Maybe they won't hire there, but they should be thinking that the keeping the company culture and embracing it and making sure that culture isn't something that you set up and then walk away from. It's not a database system. Right? You don't just go, oh, it's set up and it's running in the corner, right? It's something that needs to be cultivated. It's something that needs to be put into. It's something that needs to be fed and loved and thought of and changed as the ecosystem and the world changes. Our culture changed when COVID happened, right? Mm-hmm. And we had to adapt. We adapted to that. It wasn't the same culture as before. When we were 3 people, we're now 75. But the culture is different, but we're adapting to that. So again, it is a really, really big point. It is something you can catch people on. You can ask, and everybody likes to talk about their culture. Everybody will tell you that they have a great culture, but that's how, as an interviewer or you should be questioning in and really ask the deep questions. So when they say they have a great culture, say, can you give me 3 examples from last week where you proved that, or that that it is a great culture?
Ooh, That's a good question.
Yeah.
Thanks
There
for
you go.
coming by, Jason, and sharing your wisdom with us. You said you present some of this. Are you going to be presenting any of this at upcoming Dreamin' events after?
I am. Well, you're catching me on my road tour. I don't know if this
There's a road tour. You got to have. Are you going to have shirts made up?
I might. So
like
yeah, I actually
dates on the back.
I go to a lot of things. I will be at World Tour this year, World Tour New York in 2 days, but I don't think this podcast will be out by then. But you can catch me at Texas Dreamin' I'm doing this year. You can catch me at Witness Success. You can catch me at Mile High Dreamin'. You can catch me at Dreamforce. You can catch me at Northeast Dreamin'. And is that it? I think that's it.
I mean, Northeast Dreamin's kind of the tail end of the year for us.
Yeah, it is. So. It's the last one. So I'll be at all those. I don't know if I'll always be presenting this, but you can at least find me if you wanted to.
Right. I appreciate you coming by.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you. Let's do it in another 10 years.
Or sooner.
Or a little sooner.
Well, I thought that episode turned out phenomenal. I'm so glad I got to have Jason back, and he is going to be on a road tour presenting and helping admins at different Dreamin' events. So hopefully you can get to some of those that he mentioned. I think that'd be really neat. And some really solid tips on interviewing, and even I couldn't agree more on building experience when you've never had a job in the tech industry. So thanks, Jason, for coming on and sharing everything. And speaking of sharing, if you love this episode and you've got friends, or maybe you're going to a user group and you'd love to say, hey, I've got a podcast for you to listen to on finding that first job or getting your next Salesforce Admins job, here's how you do it. You click the 3 dots in the corner. Most of these apps, podcast apps, have this now. And you can click share episode and you can post it to social. You could send it as an email to somebody. And then they get a link and they can listen to the podcast right on their phone, maybe as they're walking their dog, and even more. Now, if you wanted to look for any links or any resources, everything I'm telling you, start your day, admin.salesforce.com. Everything is there for you. And of course, we also include a link to the Admin Trailblazer community, which is the admin group in the Trailblazer community, which is a great place, and also the place I went to get all of these questions. Now, we'll also include a transcript if there's something you need to go back and read through. That is all going to be in the show notes. So, of course, until next week, we'll see you in the cloud.